They said he had everything. The tallest palace in the whole of Igbo land, over 10 luxury cars, and servants that bowed when he only coughed. Children sang songs about him in the streets. Women knelt when he passed. His name was whispered with pride in distant villages, but when night came, King Obieze cried. He cried like a child locked in a dark room. He cried, not because of hunger, not because of war, but because something no one could see was tormenting him. Something old, something angry. It began on the day of his coronation. The sun that morning was too hot. Birds refused to sing. Even the village masquerades danced with heavy feet. Elders blamed it on bad wind, but Obieze's mother, old Queen Enkem, looked nervous. She watched the sky and rubbed her chest the whole day. When the crown touched Obieze's head, thunder rumbled from a cloudless sky. A white owl flew above the crowd and perched on the palace roof. An elder dropped his staff and shouted, "Chinnik, this is not good." Nobody listened. They feasted, they drank, they danced into the night. But by midnight, Obieze had his first dream. In the dream, a woman in white stood at the foot of his bed. Her belly was big with child. Her eyes were full of tears, and blood dripped from her forehead. She opened her mouth but spoke no words. Instead, he heard a baby crying. Obieze jumped from his bed, sweating. He screamed for the guards. They found nothing. No woman, no blood, no sound. It was just the beginning. The next night, the same dream returned. This time, the woman was closer. He could smell the earth on her skin and the bitterness in her breath. Her hands reached for him, and still no words. He asked the palace priest what it meant. The priest hesitated. He looked to the side. Then, he said, "My king, dreams are shadows from the past. Some pasts are not yours, but they still follow your blood." Obieze frowned. "What do you mean? What past?" The priest only whispered, "Ask your mother." When he asked Queen Enkem, she said nothing at first, but later that night, she entered his chamber with shaking hands and old eyes full of fear. "Obieze," she said, "there is something I never told you. Something even your father did not live long enough to explain." She sat by the fire and told a story. Many years ago, when Obieze's great-grandfather, King Udemba, ruled the land, there was a poor woman who lived in the forest edge. Her name was Adaoma. She was pregnant and known for healing people with herbs. She was kind, always helping without asking for money. One day, a child of the palace got sick. The royal healers failed. Udemba, proud and desperate, sent for Adaoma. She came and gave herbs. The child healed. The king offered her land, but she refused. "I do not want reward," she said. "Let me go back to my hut." But people began to talk. "Why is the king calling a forest woman? Maybe he is bewitched. Maybe the woman is a witch." Udemba grew angry with shame. He accused her of poisoning his family before healing them to gain favor. The elders, afraid of the king, agreed. They called her a witch, and one cold morning, soldiers dragged Adaoma from her hut and stoned her in the village square. She screamed, "I am innocent. I carry a child." He is a boy. They buried her and her unborn son in an unmarked grave near the great tree outside the palace. Queen Nem's voice broke. As she whispered, that night, the moon turned red. Years passed, but strange things began happening in the royal family. Udemba died in his sleep with his mouth wide open and his eyes frozen in fear. His son, your grandfather, ran mad at the river and drowned, even though he was a strong swimmer. Your father, Ezenwa, complained of dreams of a woman in white before, falling ill without cure, and now, it's your turn. Obieze stood. His hands trembled. His crown fell to the ground. He picked it up slowly, like it was made of fire. "So I carry the curse of a woman my blood wronged," he said quietly. That night, he locked himself in his room and wept. Days turned to weeks. The dreams became worse. Now, the woman in white was speaking. Her voice was like dry leaves. "Your blood killed me. Your blood spilled my child. Now, your blood must pay." Obieze begged. He cried. He even rolled on the palace floor like a madman. He called for every prophet in the land. One told him to sacrifice 3 white goats. Another said to build a shrine in her name. But nothing changed. One night, he stood outside the palace gates, barefoot, wearing only a white cloth. He poured ash on his head and shouted into the night air, "Adaoma, I am sorry I was not there. But I beg you, please forgive me." Villagers gathered. They had never seen a king beg. He looked at them with red eyes and said, "I have everything, yet I have no peace. I cannot sleep. I cannot laugh. I am rich, but I am empty. I am famous, but I am lost. My crown is heavy with blood." The villagers whispered, "This king is cursed." The elders came together. They called for the oldest woman in the land, Mama Obi, who was said to have seen Udemba with her own eyes. When she entered the palace, she shook her head slowly. "The land remembers," she said. "The earth drinks blood but never forgets the innocent. Until the bones of Adaoma are found and honored, this curse will remain." Obieze knelt before her. "Tell me what to do. I will do anything. I will even give up my throne." Mama Obi smiled sadly. "The spirit of a mother who died in pain never rests. You must find her grave. You must call her name. You must give her child a name and a place." Obieze stood that moment and declared, "I will dig this land with my own hands if I must. I will find her. I will beg her." From that day, the king stopped wearing his golden robes. He moved from his tall bed to a mat on the floor. He refused to eat until he heard from Adaoma again, and then she came, this time, not in a dream. The guards heard a cry in the night like a baby, but no baby was born. They ran to the king's room and found him standing in the corner, eyes wide. "She was here," he whispered. "She walked into this room," she said. "She said I must go to the tree, the great tree by the edge of the palace." The next morning, Obieze led men to the great tree. They dug all day, and as the sun began to set, one of the diggers screamed, "Bones, a woman's bones," and beside her, the tiny bones of an unborn child. Obieze dropped to the ground. He wept like a broken river. He touched the soil with his forehead and whispered, "Adaoma, forgive my house." He ordered the bones to be cleaned with wine and wrapped in white cloth. He called the priest. He called Mama Obi. He called the people. They held a burial, not for a witch, but for a queen of the forest. Obieze named the child Dumbuisi, which means life is first. At the burial, the sky became calm. A soft wind blew through the crowd. The white owl flew away. That night, Obieze slept like a baby. For the first time in months, no dreams came. No crying, no blood, only silence. But peace, they say, is never complete. They said the curse was over. The people danced again. Drums returned to the streets. Songs were sung in Obieze's honor. The king who begged the dead, they called him. Some mocked, some praised, but most believed the spirit of Adaoma had finally found rest. Yet in the heart of the palace, peace sat like a stranger. King Obieze no longer laughed. His crown gathered dust. He no longer walked with pride. Though the dreams had stopped, something inside him still felt cold. At night, he would sit by the great tree where Adaoma was reburied and whisper prayers. "Dumbuisi, your name lives," he would say to the spirit of the unborn child. "Adaoma, your shame is no more. But why do I still feel this emptiness?" The answer came slowly, and not in the way anyone expected. One morning, as the cock crowed, a mist covered the village. A small child stood at the palace gate. A girl, no more than 7. Her skin was pale, her eyes the color of river mud, and her dress was old but white like Adaoma's in the dreams. The guards stared. "Where are your parents?" one of them asked. The girl said nothing. She only pointed toward the palace doors. Word reached Obieze. He came out in a simple wrapper, his feet dusty from walking barefoot. When his eyes met the child's, he froze. She looked exactly like the woman from his dreams, not the grown Adaoma, but as if her unborn child had been born and lived. The child smiled and spoke for the first time. you called me. I have come." The king's heart stopped for a second. His throat dried. "What is your name, child?" she replied. "You gave me a name, Obieze." He stumbled back. The crowd gasped. Some ran away in fear. The elders came running. Mama Obi shook her head. "The dead do not always go in peace," she said quietly. "Some come back because they were never truly given a place." Obieze, shaking, invited the child into the palace. She walked with grace, barefoot, as if the earth herself welcomed her steps. He set her on the royal throne, something never done before with a stranger, especially a child. But the king felt he had no right to say no. "Why are you here, Obieze?" he asked. She looked around the palace halls, then back at him. "You begged for peace, but you did not beg for justice." "Justice?" he whispered. "What more do you want? You buried our bones," she said. "But you did not dig up the truth." Obieze felt his heart tighten. "What truth?" Obieze said. "The land believes your house repented, but you still hide the truth in your chest like a snake hiding poison under leaves. Your people praise you, but Adaoma's story was never told. You want me to tell it?" "No," she said gently. "You must confess it." From that day, Obieze changed again. Not with fear this time, but with guilt. He stopped attending public festivals. He turned away gifts and visits from other kings. He walked alone through his palace, speaking to no one but the girl. People whispered, "Has the king gone mad again? Who is that child? Is this a test from the gods?" One market day, he gathered the villagers in the palace square. Drums were silent. The people came in fear and curiosity. Mama Obi stood behind him. The little girl stood beside him, holding a calabash filled with palm water. Obieze raised his hands. "I come not as king today," he said, "but as a man, a broken man from a broken house." The people murmured, "My great-grandfather was praised by many, but he did a terrible thing. He killed an innocent woman, a mother, a healer. He let pride lead him, and we all have paid the price." He paused. "My grandfather drowned himself. My father died with a shadow over his soul, and I have lived in torment and begged for sleep like a beggar asks for food." He knelt on the bare ground. "This girl beside me," he said, "is the child that never lived, the son I named, but she has come in the form of a daughter, not to haunt me, but to remind me. Our house is not clean." He reached into the calabash and splashed palm water on his own head. Then he placed the calabash on the ground. "I ask you all, let this story be told to every child. Let Adaoma's name be remembered in our songs, in our prayers. Let her grave be visited, not hidden." Silence fell over the crowd. A young man stepped forward. "My father told me about Adaoma. He said she once healed my baby brother." A woman stepped forward. "She gave me herbs when I was bleeding and had no child yet. I now have 3. Voices began to rise. "We remember her. She was not a witch. She was a blessing we threw away." And then the drummers began to play not a war song, not a dance beat, but a low, slow rhythm of mourning. The village cried. The next morning, Obieze did something no king had done. He renamed the central square from Udemba Market to Adaoma Grounds. He took down the portrait of Udemba from the palace wall and replaced it with a simple wooden carving of a pregnant woman holding her stomach. That night, Obieze came to his room. "It is done," she said softly. "Will you leave now?" he asked. She looked at him. "I am not really here to stay or leave. I am here to be remembered." She handed him a folded white cloth. Inside was a small necklace, a circle made of cowries and a broken bead. "What is this?" he asked. "It was my mother's. She wore it the day she died. It belongs in your hand now. Keep it, not for guilt, for memory." And with that, she walked out into the night. She was never seen again. The next years were quiet ones. The people said peace had returned to the palace. Obieze ruled without pride. He visited the poor. He opened schools. He built a healing center and named it Adaoma's Hope. He smiled more, but he still kept the necklace in a wooden box under his pillow. Sometimes, he would wake in the middle of the night, hearing a baby cry faintly in the wind. But now, he no longer feared it. He would whisper, "Sleep, Dumbuisi. Sleep well." Yet deep in the forest, where the first grave once lay, a new flower grew each year without anyone planting it, a white flower, and every time it bloomed, the palace. Dogs howled at the moon. Peace had come, but the story was not yet over. The skies opened gently and a soft rain began to fall. Obieze stood in the rain, arms stretched wide, the white cloth around his waist soaked through. Mama Obi stood beside him. "You have done all you can, Obieze," she said. "You may never find her spirit. But now, she will know she was not forgotten." But something different happened. The clouds above the palace shifted. A bright white light appeared in the sky, like the sun piercing through storm clouds. The villagers gasped. In that light, 2 birds flew out of the forest, one large, one small, both pure white. They circled above Obieze and then soared toward the burial ground of Adaoma. The rain stopped. The air grew still. Obieze dropped to his knees, crying, "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for allowing me to make it right." From that day forward, not only was the land quiet, but the fear that haunted his family vanished completely. The nightmares stopped. The palace dogs stopped howling. The earth began to yield more harvest. The rivers flowed more gently, and joy returned to the royal home. But this time, it was not the loud, careless joy of the proud. It was peace born from truth, and King Obieze changed his kingdom forever. He passed a new law. No person shall be punished without evidence, and every soul, rich or poor, must be treated with dignity. He built the House of Healing, named after Adaoma, where women, widows, and orphans could live, learn, and grow. He built a library called Chimamanda and Dumbuisi Memorial Hall, where children studied history, the real history. He wanted his people to know the story of truth, mercy, and forgiveness. And he gathered his sons and daughters and told them, "Never wear the crown with pride. Wear it with responsibility. We are no longer a cursed family. We are a family that faced truth and survived it." When Obieze grew old, he did not fear death. He smiled often. He danced during festivals again. And when his first grandchild was born, he named her Chimamanda. As he held her, he whispered, "You will never beg. Not in spirit, not in soul, not in name." And she smiled, just as the white birds returned and flew over the palace one last time. Obieze lived to see peace become his family's story, not torment. And on his final birthday, he said to the crowd, "I was once called the begging king, but today, I am the king who broke the chain."